Great day, amazing humans. Yes, welcome to Empowering Bytes. This is where we keep it short and sweet. But who is the we? Well, the we is me, Nkechi, and
I'm Gabby with 1B. Pleased to be the co-host of these Empowering Bytes, where we keep it short and sweet.
E to the A to the B to the Y. Mamone! That is Gabby 1B Mamone. Let's go, girl. Let the show begin. Great day, amazing humans. Yes, and welcome to the next episode of Empowering Bytes. And yeah, you get this right. There isn't anybody else that's coming. Guess what? You have got me for this short, sweet, but thoughtful, insightful episode. I actually am unlocking something that I heard really just this morning. And so transparently, this is being recorded on December 3rd. So I'm just letting you know this is like how early this is, but it really it shook me. And it was I was taking a I guess it's a podcast episode called The Next Chapter by TD Jakes, and he was interviewing Denzel Washington. And they got to a point in the conversation on the podcast. It was termed, I guess the chapter is "Get Out of Your Way." And I love that because Denzel used that phrase a number of times throughout the interview. And I think it was just really a testament to, or an observation in his life that his success has really come by him getting out of his own way. And even just that there's a lesson for, there's definitely something that that struck me hearing that so often with him as he recounted sort of his life and sharing his insights and point of views on different topics. And so I certainly can get out of my own way. But in this particular case, they were talking about and now I would have to go back. This is how new it is, right? I haven't even gone back to listen to it. I just took notes and knew, and in knowing that I needed to record a solo episode, I just put it to God. I was like, God, what laid on my heart what I should come here and speak to the world about? And I think I got permission to unpack both of these in large part because I've had the opportunity to use it today as part of just some leadership, right? Some difficult conversations that I had to have, and I really did leverage this, and I shared it with another leader, and they were like, "Oh, that was good," and they were writing it down, and so I was like, you know what? I think that's the confirmation that I need that this is what I'm going to talk about. So you've been waiting on bated breath. So the two statements are, and by the way, I prepared notes because I really want to get this right. So the two statements are we worship at the shrine of our own point of view. And the second one that marries and parallels with it is idolatry is to think that the way you see it is the way that it is. So sit with that for a moment. I'll repeat them again in case you're not taking notes. We worship at the shrine of our own point of view. And the second one is idolatry is to think that the way you see it is the way that it is. And so, really and truly, I think in this space that I'm going to navigate with you over the next maybe 8 minutes or so, it's really just an invitation for us to notice where, our perspective might be limiting our growth, right? Like we might be so hard pressed to be so stuck on sort of our thinking about a certain situation. And typically I'm probably going to anchor on, those situations where you feel slighted, where you feel hurt, where you feel you've been disrespected, and you're really holding on to how you believe what happened. And there's nothing wrong. First of all, I just disclaimer because hey, I'm in that I'm holding on to category on certain things, right? But I actually invited myself today to see if I can grab hold of these new concepts really quickly. Because I think why it resonated with me is that I am really in this era of life, really trying to like align myself with that which brings me least amount of resistance. And I think when I heard that, I felt like that's a growth moment for you, Inc. You know? And so, if I just start with like the shrine of our own point of view. And my thoughts around this is like when you think about shrine, you think about something really sacred, like something that you're going to behold and care for it, and it's honored and it's protected and nothing can come in and and some of us without even knowing it have turned our opinions into shrines. I think, if I really think back, like I have a lot of experiences that I myself have done that. And I think even as a leader, it's 100% more important to not do that, especially when you're entering into difficult conversations with other people, right? You have to be willing to show up open, curious, seeking to understand, um, and even seeking more to understand than to be understood, right? To me, when I start to think about how I can really embrace this in my life, I think it's really that's it, right? It's turning the tables on myself and not trying to get people to understand my point of view, understand what I'm saying, understand why I'm hurt, but asking questions and saying, this is how you showed up for me today, or this is how I'm sort of looking at this situation. Help me to see more windows of thought, of insight, of things that I may not have thought about, right? And so, it's about moving away from worshiping our own point of views, defending it, justifying it, protecting it. I remember years ago, and I often have used this myself. I think it's Ilana Vincent. She said, it's either her or Lisa Nichols. I have nothing to hide, nothing to protect, nothing to pretend, and nothing to defend. And that's really being able to sit in this space where you're void of resistance, you know? And so here's um I think an opportunity for us to figure out how can we know when we're faced with this. I think it's when maybe we feel we're being attacked by something, or being potentially challenged. And I sort of thought about like how myself I can start to put sort of tools in place, tactical things in place that I can step into in those moments. So I'll share those my thoughts with you before we get to the end of this episode. But I do believe that um, when we get so maniacal and overly attached to our perspective, we are actually blocking a lot of opportunity and potentially healthier point of views, right, than our own. And so and I think something also happens to us. We actually stop listening to the peoples, right? We are responding. We are listening to respond, right? We stop listening. We create distance, right? We forget about harmony. Like there's no harmonization happening in that. So I think I framed that enough. So I think we all understand that. Now, how about idolatry as our own perspective as well? Right. So that was the second quote, which was, and going back to my notes, idolatry is to think that the way you see it is the way that it is. And so what I wrote here is idolatry technically isn't just statues and symbols. Like, idolatry is when we elevate anything above humility, and in my life above God, right? Like idolizing something that is, I think, um, not that which is bigger than ourselves, right? But actually, idolizing something that is not grounded in anything, can easily slip through our fingers, can a circumstance can take it away, that. And so when you are like idolizing something and you're only looking at it from that point of view, I believe that that's where, again, some of those same, feelings you get from that I had just kind of rhymed off earlier, really start to come into play. You stop listening. You become extremely. You feel like you're being attacked. You are radically responding in a way that takes you away from harmony. Um, and so we're responding at that point in time through our wounds, through the things that we idolize, through our biases. So all of those come into play. So, okay, I think I have framed this enough in terms of like, so those are some of the key points that came up when I was like, okay, give me evidence, God, I said on these two things, either in myself or, just through my experience that I have with others. And so I think that what this means for me from like and where I see it coming into play like in relationships and definitely in leadership, like I was talking about today, is I definitely know it shows up anywhere, everywhere, right? So in our relationships where we argue to be right, not to understand. So I said earlier that I think for me, what I can see as such a great like flip on this is really seeking constantly to understand. Forget about being understood. I think that that's overrated. Seeking to understand, adding perspective, right? And so I always like to say, and I had a big team session. I remember one of our guiding principles is that we use the word add. And I like to add to, right? And then collectively we can try to agree on what gets taken away, right? But we always add to. I'd like to add to what you're saying. I'd like to add to your perspective, right? And in leadership, I think it shows up when we push our ideas instead of inviting collaboration. Woof, right? And so in conflict is where we react before reflecting. That I'm getting a little bit better. To accept maybe some of my closest relationships. Okay. Maybe I had a moment this morning, actually. I probably misunderstood some advice I was getting from a really great friend and reacted to that because it felt contrary to what I felt I'd locked into in terms of a decision for myself. And in faith, it's where our interpretation becomes more important than God's intention, right? And so listening becomes impossible when we're in love with our own point of view. So, y'all, we need to fall out of love of our own point of view. We have to recognize that it is not the only way to see a certain situation and that we don't know everything. And so let's talk a little bit as I close up, as I promised. Here's some of my reflection points on how we can actually break free from perspective, right? And so here are a few things that might help us move away, some of which I mentioned. Ask what else could be true. I think that's a great one. Or what needs to be true in order for me to believe something different, you know? This small question I think opens up big possibilities. What else could be true? Because so far as you have something else that could be true, well, guess what? Your point of view just got shattered. And there is an alternate way to look at this. And if there's an alternate way to look at it, then maybe you can get a balanced view in terms of what you're dealing with and navigating. Another one would be practice curiosity instead of certainty, right? So seeking to ask, I said. So pause before defending and ask one more question. Just one more question. Another one could be consider the lens you're looking at this through. So remember, I talked about biases and our wounds, our hurts, and so I think that that's a personal thing. Why is it that I'm thinking this? Is it fear? Is it ego? Is this really true? Right? Because sometimes I think we have the audacity to think that people wake up just to make our day bad or to give us really poor advice, or to disrespect us. I think that, right? Because at the end of the day, I always say there is what is said, and before you ingest it, you have to recognize the moment you ingest it, it is then going to mix with every other experience that you have already had prior to what was said. And so at that point in time, you're infecting it with maybe, things that you've never unpacked within yourself. And so I always say, there's got to be this opportunity. I'm in IT, like this firewall that's configured where things can have to go through and get analyzed and processed first and the stuff that won't serve you gets spit out and the stuff that would serve you can then be safely ingested, right? But there's got to be that firewall, that ability to examine, to question, to like challenge what it is that you are hearing or trying to understand before you actually ingest it. So I think that there's that. Another one could be hold the possibility that your perspective is incomplete. And that's where I think asking questions. So what else can be, like, I think we go back to that question, what else can be true, or what might I be missing? What transpired prior to me showing up in this moment, especially if it's another human being. It's like, hey, you're showing up a little bit differently for me today. What happened to you this morning? Like prior to you meeting up with me. And it's not wrong. It's not your perspective at that point is not wrong. It's just, but it may not just be complete. You may not have the full understanding of everything. And then listen to understand, not reload. And so most people listen to respond and empower, but I do recognize, and I have to be better at this. Empowered people listen to learn. Empowered people listen to learn. So I am so in love with these two statements. I don't know if anything I've just shared resonated with you. Have have like like honestly, I don't even know if I listened to the episode beyond that. I have to go back and look and watch my LinkedIn. But if you want to know, actually, it was TD Jakes. It's his next chapter. I think I might have mentioned this already. This is my perimenopause brain. But TD Jakes, anyway, leader. No, I take that back. Leadership is actually repetition. So it is TD Jakes' next chapter podcast interview that he had with Denzel Washington. It was recently released on YouTube, so I think it's fairly new, but it's worth the listen. And this particular place where I've heard these statements was in the chapter, the section of the interview called "Get Out of Your Way." Okay, so please do take it in. Please share what you think about this. And then, as a call to action, I think I want to just invite all of us to notice an area in our lives where we have built a shrine around our own perspective. And this could be really live. Like think about, be present in your day tomorrow. Okay. And then gently, just gently step off the throne, just invite something else in. Ask someone in your life, how do you see it? You know, and then truly listen. And so far as you can come up with another balanced view, well, guess what? You now don't have one point of view. You have a balanced view, you know? And so when we release our grip on being right, we make room for being wise. I love that, right? And so you already know what I always say, empowered humans, empowered humans. So I share this today, and that empowerment truly starts with humility, with curiosity, and the courage to expand your view. So join me on, pushing past and growing in a way that we don't just invite one point of view into any type of interaction that we're in, but we really ask questions to bring more point of views and to really challenge ourselves to actually see bigger picture, more thought, more insight, more opportunity. And I think that just going to open up better collaboration and connection with others. So it is your girl. I hope you enjoy this solo interview. I don't know if this is my first for the year, but it's certainly the first on the YouTube channel. So shout outs to the YouTube channel and my first solo interview. But to everyone, we keep these short and sweet. And this is where I have to say, we're out. Bye bye. Actually, I'm out. Bye. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode.